It was a typical afternoon, one of those moments when the house felt eerily quiet. The sun was shining through the windows, and I was just folding the laundry, something I had done countless times before. The soft sound of fabric being folded, the occasional rustling as I picked up the next shirt, and the hum of the washing machine in the background made everything seem routine. But little did I know that today would be different. My son, whom I had always seen as my little boy, walked in. I didn't expect him to be home this early, but there he was, standing in the doorway of the laundry room, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I looked up from the pile of clothes, smiling at him, expecting the usual greeting, but instead, he stood there silently for a moment, as if contemplating something. It wasn't like him to be so serious, Mom. We need to talk, he said softly. His tone immediately sent a shiver down my spine. It was a tone I hadn't heard from him before, and it carried a weight that was hard to ignore. I paused mid-fold, folding the shirt I had in my hands, and looked at him curiously about what I asked, trying to maintain some normalcy in my voice. Despite the uneasy feeling slowly creeping up inside me, I know about Dad, he said. The words were so simple, yet they felt like a blow to my chest. My heart sank in an instant. What do you mean? I could feel my voice trembling, though I tried to keep my composure. My mind raced, but I couldn't make sense of what he was saying. How could he possibly know about that? I had done everything I could to protect him from the truth, to shield him from the pain that was starting to unfold in my own life. He walked over to where I was standing and sat down on the stool beside me, his eyes locked with mine. There was no sign of anger or confusion on his face, just a strange calmness that made me feel even more uncomfortable. I know what happened, Mom, he said again, his voice steady now. I know what Dad did. And just like that, the floodgates opened. The truth was out in the open, and I had no idea how to handle it. How could I explain to my son what I had tried to bury deep down for so long? How could I protect him from the hurt and betrayal that I had been trying to shield him from? I stood there frozen for a moment, the pile of laundry now forgotten on the floor. My son wasn't just any kid. He was perceptive, sensitive, and somehow, he had caught on to the small things, the tiny cracks in the facade that I had worked so hard to maintain. What do you know? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid of the answer, but I had to know. I saw the texts, Mom. He said quietly. I overheard the conversation between you and Aunt Rachel. I heard about what Dad's been doing when he's not around. The words felt like they were suffocating me. My mind raced, but nothing could prepare me for hearing the painful reality spoken aloud. It was true. Everything that I had feared, everything that had kept me awake at night, the secret I had been carrying for months, maybe even years, was now out. My son knew about the infidelity. My hands trembled as I reached for a shirt to fold, something to keep me grounded in the moment. But there was no escaping the reality of what was happening. My son was no longer a child in my eyes. He was someone who had witnessed the unraveling of a relationship, someone who had seen through the cracks in the life we had built together. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, I said softly, my voice barely audible. But I need you to understand, this isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. I could see the sadness in his eyes, the way he was processing the weight of the situation. He was hurting, and I could feel it in my heart. I didn't know what to do, Mom, he whispered. It doesn't feel like our family anymore. It's like everything's changed. I could feel the guilt wash over me, drowning me in its intensity. He was right. Our family wasn't the same anymore. The betrayal had changed everything. But how? Could I have known how to navigate this? How to protect him when I was struggling just as much? You're right, I said, my voice filled with sorrow. Things have changed, but we'll figure this out together. We're still a family, even if things feel broken right now. I didn't know if those words were true, but I had to believe them. For him. For us, the conversation didn't go the way I expected. It wasn't a loud argument or a dramatic confrontation. It was quieter, more heartbreaking. A child who had to grow up too fast. A mother who had to face the harsh truth that her family was falling apart in front of her. We sat there together for a long time, neither of us speaking, just letting the silence settle between us. It was a moment I will never forget, a moment where everything changed. Where the weight of betrayal, of infidelity, became too much to bear. As we sat there, I couldn't help but think about the future. About how this moment, this dark revelation, would shape our lives. How my son would look at me differently now. How my husband's actions had shattered not just my trust, but the innocence of a child, and how, despite everything, I still had to find a way to keep going, to find a way to heal. For both of us, the rest of the day felt like a blur. I went through the motions, doing the laundry, cleaning the house, pretending like everything was okay. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. My son had seen through the lies, and now, we both had to face the painful reality together. In the days that followed, the conversations between my son and I became more frequent. I tried my best to answer his questions honestly, to provide him with the comfort and support he needed, even as I struggled to come to terms with my own emotions. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to break down and cry, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But I couldn't. Not when he needed me to be strong. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, caught between trying to protect my child from the harsh realities of life and being forced to confront my own pain. But here we were. And as much as it hurt, as much as the guilt and sadness consumed me, I knew that this was our new reality. We would heal in time. But for now, we had to face the truth. The days after that conversation felt like a fog. I went through the motions, but it was as if I was walking in a haze. The house, which used to feel like a place of comfort and safety, now felt like a cold, empty shell. Every room seemed to hold a memory, a reminder of the life that once was, before everything had changed. My son, too, had retreated into a quiet space. He was still processing, still trying to make sense of everything. There were moments when I'd catch him staring out of the window, his mind clearly a million miles away, and I knew that he was carrying a weight much too heavy. For a young heart, I tried to reach out to him, to talk about how we were feeling, but every time, he would just withdraw. It was as if the trust that had once bound us together had been severed, and no words could fix it. I understood why. The betrayal wasn't just mine to carry. It had affected him too, deeply. But it didn't make the isolation I felt any easier to bear. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, lost in thought, I heard the front door open. My husband had come home early, and I knew that the moment of truth was upon us. We had to talk. But the thought of facing him, the man who had shattered everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty, was more than I could bear. He walked into the kitchen, and for the first time in a long while, there was no warm greeting, no casual exchange of words. We both stood there, unsure of what to say, our bodies stiff with tension. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw regret, or maybe it was guilt, flash across his face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the same cold detachment I had grown accustomed to over the past few months. Can we talk? He asked, his voice low and hesitant. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was ready. But we couldn't keep avoiding it. We couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I know you're angry, he began, taking a seat across from me at the table. And you have every right to be. But I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen. The words were hollow, meaningless. He had said the same thing before, over and over again. I had heard it all, the empty promises, the excuses, the blame shifting onto everything and everyone but himself. The truth was clear. He had chosen this path. And now, there was no going back. You didn't mean to hurt me, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you know what you've done? You've destroyed the one thing I trusted most, our family. You've hurt not just me, but our son too. The anger was rising now, bubbling up inside me like a volcano, ready to erupt. I could feel my heart racing, my pulse pounding in my ears. Every word he spoke felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of the betrayal that had cut me to the core. I'm sorry, he said again, but the apology was too late. It didn't change the fact that he had made choices that had led us to this moment. The damage was done, and what about our son? I asked. The pain in my voice was unmistakable. What about him? He's the one who's been forced to grow up too fast, who's been carrying this burden because of your actions. You think saying sorry will fix it? You think it will make things right? He was silent for a long moment, and I could see the guilt creeping back into his eyes. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. The trust had been broken, and no amount of words could mend it. I know, he whispered, his voice trembling. I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you both more than I can ever fix. But I don't want to lose this family. I don't want to lose you. His words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to think that maybe, just maybe, we could repair the damage, rebuild the foundation of trust that had been shattered. But another part of me knew the truth. Things could never go back to the way they were. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You had your chance," I said softly. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "You had your chance, and you threw it all away." He looked at me, his expression one of desperation, but I couldn't find it in myself to offer him any comfort. "Not after everything. Not after the lies and the pain. I'll do anything," he pleaded. "Anything to make it right. Please, don't walk away." But the truth was, I was already walking away. Not physically, but emotionally. The damage had been done, and I couldn't undo it. The trust, the love, the hope that once held us together had all disappeared in an instant, replaced by a cold, unforgiving reality. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't pretend that everything's okay when it's not. I can't keep living in this lie." The words hung in the air between us, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity. The decision had been made. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness, my peace of mind, for someone who had so willingly thrown it all away. "I'm sorry," he said again. But this time, the words felt even emptier than before. I replied, the weight of the moment settling in. But sometimes, sorry isn't enough, and with that, I stood up from the table, leaving him sitting there, a man who had lost everything. But in a way, so had I. Our son had lost his innocence. I had lost my trust. And together, we had lost the life we once knew. As I walked away, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be heartbreak, confusion, and a lot of pain to work through. But one thing was certain. This was the end of a chapter. And though the future was uncertain, it was a future that I would have to face. With or without him, the days after the confrontation with my husband were filled with a profound sense of loss. Each passing moment felt heavier than the last, but I knew it was time for me to start healing. I had to focus on what mattered most, my son and our future. For the first time in a long while, I was alone in my thoughts, trying to piece together what my next steps would be. There were so many questions, so many uncertainties, but the one thing I was certain of was that I had to be strong. For him, my son didn't speak much after that day, but I could see his mind working overtime. He was trying to process everything, trying to understand the mess that had been created by the very people who were supposed to protect him. It wasn't just the fact that his father had betrayed me. It was the loss of the life he had once known. I couldn't protect him from that. Truth. No one could. One afternoon, as I sat with him in the living room, he finally broke the silence. He looked at me, his eyes full of sadness, but there was something else there too. "Strength." "I know it's not easy, Mom," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of someone far older than his years. "But I think we'll be okay." I wasn't sure if I believed it, but hearing those words from him, from my son who had faced more than any child should, gave me a sense of comfort. It was a small light in the darkness. He wasn't angry at me, and that was more than I could have hoped for. He understood that life wasn't perfect, that sometimes people made mistakes that couldn't be undone. But he still had hope. And that hope was enough to give me the strength to keep going. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of our new life began to settle in. I moved forward, though it wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to look back, to turn the clock, back to when things felt right. But I knew that wasn't possible. I could no longer hold on to the past. It was time to face the future, even if it meant doing so alone. My husband, despite his apologies and attempts to make things right, had made his choices. I couldn't continue to live in a world of broken promises and lies. I had to break free from the chains of the past and rebuild my life on my own terms. I filed for separation soon after, and though the process was painful and emotionally draining, I knew it was the right decision. I couldn't continue to live with someone who had shattered my trust so completely. The first few months were a blur of paperwork, emotions, and figuring out how to make things work on my own. But I focused on my son, on making sure he felt safe and loved. He needed that stability, that reassurance that despite everything, we would be okay. And, slowly, I began to heal. There were still hard days. Days when I would look at an empty chair across the dinner table and feel the weight of the absence. Days when my son would ask questions about his father, and I would have to find the strength to answer with honesty, without bitterness. But as time passed, those days became fewer, and I found new ways to create a life filled with peace and love. We started going on weekend trips together, just the two of us, creating new memories, carving out new traditions. We laughed together, shared moments of joy, and learned how to navigate life as a team. It wasn't the life I had once imagined for us, but it was a life that I could live with, one that was grounded in truth and love I never expected my life to take such a turn, and I certainly never expected the dark secrets of infidelity to come to light in such a shocking way. But through it all, I learned something powerful about myself. I learned that even in the face of the deepest pain, there was strength to be found. And that strength became my foundation as I rebuilt my life, brick by brick. Though the betrayal still lingered in the back of my mind, it no longer had control over me. I had taken back my power, and that was the most liberating thing of all. I was no longer defined by the mistakes of others or by the pain that had been inflicted upon me. I was moving forward, creating a life filled with hope and new beginnings. And as for my son, he was thriving. He was growing into a young man who understood the complexities of life, who had learned that love wasn't perfect, but it was worth fighting for. He had seen the darkest side of life, but he had also seen the resilience that can emerge when we face our fears and pain head-on. In the end, we had both learned that life goes on, even after betrayal. And while the scars may never completely fade, they became part of our story, our journey. A journey that was far from over, but one that was now filled with the possibility of something better.